It's Miss Whitley, and I am recording for you the 8 PowerPoints from Chapter 4. If you hear echo in the room, it's because I'm in a dance studio that I found opened, and so that's why it might sound like I'm in a cathedral and there's a lot of volume. This video is going to take, or this audio recording is going to take about 15 minutes, and I hope it will help you in your preparations for your test. Your test is this Sunday, September the 29th, and it's due by 11:59. Many of you have taken it already, and so let me just talk to you about the test. These 8 PowerPoints that are coming up are from Chapter 4. Chapter 4 begins on page 77 and runs through page 102 in your 102 in your textbook. Chapter 4 is the last part of the Part 1 section of your textbook. It's the first 4 chapters that make up test number 1. Those are chapters, of course, chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now remember, this test is already open and it's due by 11:59. The test is timed 75 minutes, and it will automatically close after 75 minutes, whether you're finished or not. If the test should finish earlier than that by some mistake, please get in touch with me. Let me know. We'll discuss how to reset it for you. And the test is open book, but don't let that deceive you. If you can, please read either the book if you've got it. If you've not yet purchased the book, then some of the PowerPoints in lessons 2 through 6 will help you, because those PowerPoints come directly from the chapters. So that's something you can do as a backup if you don't have the book. There are 50 questions on this test, and they're randomly drawn from the 4 chapters. I can tell you, you'll have 13 questions from chapters 1 and chapters 4, and you'll have 12 each from chapters 2 and from chapters 3 to equal the 50. All right, so let me just go ahead and jump into chapter 4. We'll look at the next 7 slides as we move towards finishing. Minutes. I believe it's on page 80 in your book that starts the learning theories. So there are 3 of them that the book discusses. One of them is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Let me see if I can get my pointer to work here. Maslow's hierarchy is one of the oldest explanations for how people learn how they actually live life, and it's based on each level of a pyramid being met before the next level can be met. This is by a human. So in other words, people have physiological needs to eat, to drink, to maintain their life, their existence, and unless those needs are met, then humans don't move up to safety and security, which is having something over your head, having comfort of not being threatened in your life. Maybe you have a security system in your house. That would be an example of security, safety and security. Love and belonging is the next rung in this pyramid. Once your physiological and your safety and security needs are met, then we as organisms, we as people begin to work on trying to belong to a group, feeling apart, getting over loneliness. Loneliness is a terrible thing. Being alone is one thing, but loneliness is not so good. A lot of people like being alone, but not necessarily like being lonely. After you finish meeting your psychological safety and security, according to Maslow in his hierarchy of needs, then you're able to move to self-esteem. On page 80, you'll see that Maslow defines self-esteem as having a sense of accomplishment. And then once all of these are met, you go into self-actualization. Self-actualization is where you're able to focus on reaching your full potential. It's where you're able to identify a purpose for being alive, and then studying, working, moving forward to accomplish that purpose. So the rest of these areas need to be met before you can begin focusing on being a true learner. And then if you have dropped or lost your self-esteem, you'll have to work back on this level before you can go back to self-actualization. Bandura's theory of social learning can be summed up in this: I'm the oldest sister in our family, and my baby brother never got a spanking. And that's because he observed my actions and learned what in our family got children punished. And so my brother never got spanked. I don't even know if he ever got punished because he was perfect in watching everything I did wrong. You probably have that same scenario in your family dynamics or with friends or cousins or some unit you're with. You watch people learn what to do and what not to do. In education, what you could do to apply Bandura's theory of social learning, which is learning from one another, is that you watch what the most successful students in class do and you mimic those behaviors. For example, the successful students, again, according to page 80 in the book, I think it's 80, are those that will interact with their teachers. They'll come to class. They have a set time that they study. They probably work on a balanced life where they have food and exercise, and they manage their free time, make sure they have it, make sure they have playtime. And those are the students that you try to emulate or copy. That's what Bandura's theory of social learning is about. The last one is Schlossberg's theory of transition, which says that adults, which we all are now, learn through transition and change, but there's a caveat or a condition to learning through change and transition, and that is that you have a wise counselor or a group of counselors and friends and family, people that are mentors to you that help you define the lessons that can come out of a transition. Transitions or changes can be positive. It can be a new baby. Maybe you're getting married. It's a new car. I don't know, a new job. And they can be negative. Maybe you've lost somebody in your life that's very important. The key to learning through that is to have others who can help you identify what are the main things I can take from this and apply it somewhere else. Now, those are the first two slides. Let's knock out the last. The last or the next three slides, I think, deal with learning styles, and you will remember the VARK learning style, which stands for visual, oral, read and write, and kinesthetic, which is kinetic or movement, body movements. This is the way people learn through their senses. We all learn through our touch, through sight, through hearing, through reading, and it's our preference of which one of those senses we like to use that creates our learning style. Now, I am a multimodal person, meaning that based on what I'm trying to learn and the circumstances I'm in as a student, could be out of a classroom and just a student of life, I might use any one of these, and I can use any one of these. I'm surprised at how many of you are also multimodal. You can switch back and forth between the modes. There's nothing wrong, though, with being fully concentrating in one or the other. Like some of you are pure oral. You like to listen to stories. You learn through lectures. You listen through television. You like radio or music and things that's the way that you learn. Others of you like to work with your hands, whether it's dissecting something or building something, welding, or you're a mechanic, or you're going to work on a computer. That's kinesthetic. So I should just say that this is one of the three learning styles that you'll have an assignment due on October the 6th for. So I'll tell you more about that in lesson 7, but let's keep moving through the second learning assessment tool that you'll be taking in lesson 7. Briggs actually stands for the mother-daughter team that created the Myers-Briggs. You can see on this slide that it says psychological type, but it's actually psychological characteristics, and it's on a combination of 4 different scales of how we each see the world. Now, none of us are going to score 0 in any of these scales, but you're going to have a predominance of either extroversion or introversion. Extroverts are people who get their energy from outside themselves. They like going out to parties. They like going out and just being with a crowd. And introverts are people who are exhausted by what extroverts are energized by. Introverts are refueled, if you will, by being home alone or maybe with just 1 or 2 friends. It doesn't mean that they don't go out to parties, and they may go out to huge parties, but they also might be the ones who come home sooner or after a large gathering of people where they've extended themselves. They may need a couple of days where they just want to rest and take it easy and go into their man caves or their bat caves or their women caves. You know, they just need that place where they can recharge privately. That's an introvert. There's a lot of good books on introversion. We'll talk about those later. One of the ones that comes to mind immediately is the book called Quiet. The other parts of the psychological type, and you're going to take a test. You'll take it. It's actually in a link in lesson 7, but you'll find out where you fall on each one of these 4 scales, and then you'll come up with a 4-letter description of your psychological type or the psychological characteristics of how you interface with the world. So we've talked about extroversion, introversion. Now let's talk about right here where it's sensing and intuition. So sensing is, do you perceive the world through all of your bodily senses, through how you smell, you see, you believe what you hear through your touch, or do you get kind of gut reactions? I believe that intuition is a combination of things that our brain picks up and puts together in some sort of an order that makes sense to us, but it's not sensing, as in using our body to interact with the world. We use impressions and ideas and that 6th sense that people talk about. It's not unscientific, by the way. Intuition is a real thing. So are you a sensor or are you an intuitive person? The last 2 are thinking and feeling. And do you prefer, for example, to deal with analytical things? Do you make your decisions based on facts? Or do you base your decisions on how you feel about something, your likes, your dislikes, and your values? I think the thinking one is more clinical. You're just the facts, ma'am. But feeling is where you might put a dash of, well, this is what moves me. And even though it's more logical to go this way, I'm going to go with my sense of compassion or what I'm really, really interested in. So that's your preference for making decisions. Judging and perceiving, I would say, instead of how you approach the outside world, another way that you could say this sentence is that judging and perceiving talks about how you control the world and your spot in it. Judging people, and I don't know where they came up with this word from, you might use list. You are very organized. Perceiving people, instead of making a list, they keep their grocery list, for example, in their heads. They just don't write a whole lot of things down and they kind of go with the flow. They're not as organized. So we'll be doing a test like this. And on page, I believe it's page 89 in your book, that's one of the ways that you're going to answer a question for your assignment on October the 6th. And that's how does your particular psychological type deal with studying? What's the best way for your type to study? On page 86 is the best way for your VARC style to study. So check out those 2 pages. You'll see the assignment in lesson 7 and you'll understand more why pages 86 and 87, or rather 86 and 89 are important. The last assessment that you will take to wrap up your assignment for October the 6th is the Multiple Intelligences by Howard Gardner. And I won't talk so much about these. They're also in the book, and I think probably around page 90. You'll really, I think, enjoy getting to learn what your top 3 intelligences are, and there is a link to that in lesson 7 and also in your book. The last 2 slides are, what do you do when your learning style conflicts with your teacher's teaching style? Now, let me just tell you right off the bat that a teacher usually teaches based on how they prefer to learn. So let's say you're in a class that it has an oral, likes to learn through listening, based teacher. And so they lecture all the time. But you're a kinetic learner and you need to move. So how do you handle that difference? The book will lay it all on you. The book will say that you have to, as you read here, depend on yourself and not on your instructor so that you can maximize your experience in the class. And the textbook does have in chapter 4 some techniques for how you can do that. Take control and maximize your learning style, even if your teacher's learning style is completely different. How do you deal with disabilities? The most important thing I want to point out here is that learning disabilities are not related to intelligence. They're related to how you take in information, how you process it, and then how you regurgitate it. Another word for vomit, but how you put it back out into the world. So learning disabilities are not related to how smart you are. They're related to how you process, retain, and then apply information. The other thing I think I want to point out about this slide is that there are services available at most colleges. If you think, for example, certainly at Gwinnett Tech there are services. If you think that you have a learning disability that's never been diagnosed, talk to somebody. We have counseling services here. You've got disability services that you could talk to an instructor and get some counsel on which direction to go. If you already have an IEP or an individual education plan, you have paperwork that documents disability that you're working with, and there are multiple types of the ways our brains are put together, then make sure you have submitted those to disability services and can take advantage of the accommodations that are there and ready for you through multiple federal agencies and other government directives. So they're out there for you. Take advantage of them and give your brain its maximum potential to succeed. Final, this is how do you take care of being an online learner if your learning styles really favor being in front of people. I can tell you that my 17-year-old is taking an AP economics class and is having a terrible time because he is a real strong extrovert. As I mentioned earlier, nobody scores 0 on any of the scales. You just have predominant favorites, the way that you're put together. And my 17-year-old definitely has some introverted traits. He scores real high, though, on extroversion. And so he's very unhappy taking this AP economics class from our house in the afternoon and being away from his colleagues and his teacher. So the book has some really good suggestions for how to take care of yourself. It takes a lot as an online learner. It takes a special person to be an online learner. You have to be self-motivated. You have to be self-guided. You've got to initiate reaching out to your instructor and your classmates. And so the book does have suggestions for how you can do that. And one last thing, too, about if you are looking for suggestions or resources, if you think that you could become either a better online student or if you suspect you have a disability or definitely do have one, there are resources listed rather on page 100. All right, that got us under 18 minutes for chapter 4. I wish you so much luck on the exam, your quiz, test number 1. If you have any problems, email me. Make sure you get it in before 11:59 Sunday, September the 9th. And next week we'll talk about the assignment that's due on October the 6th, which is the Learning Styles Inventory. And if you want to start on that, you can already slip to Lesson 7 and see if you can follow the instructions. Have a good weekend. It's Miss Whitley signing off.